This conference will now be recorded.
So till now what we had seen in the data view language is how to transform the data from one format to another format just by using the graphical interfaces, and just by typing in simple syntaxes like payload or something, we had transformed the data into JSON. So those are the things which we had done. Data view, we just got it. So guys, can you hear me and can you see my screen clearly? Sudhir and Ram?
Yes, Mahesh.
Ram? Ram, are you there? Okay, I guess Ram is in mute or something. Okay. So at the starting point, I am just going to drag and drop the HTTP listener connector here, where the HTTP listener connector is just used to listen the request and display the response in the browser with the help of port number and end path. So I'm just creating the HTTP listener configuration since it is resolving the metadata here. Let us wait. Okay. I'm clicking on OK. And I'm just typing /DW as our end path over here. So under this advanced, I'm just using the get method in order to get the total data as our response. I'm just using the transform message connector. And I'm just applying the logger over here, applying the payload in it. So here, what are the examples which had been given by the MuleSoft people that we are just going to perform it in the data view transformations. So we are just going to create the data manually and how to transform the data manually, that we are just going to see it. So let me drag and drop it below and let me scroll it down. So the first example where we are moving for is, so they had given the data in the JSON format, and I just want the response in the XML format over here. So whatever the data we are having is in the JSON format. So I am just creating a text.json file we had already created. Since the file is in the JSON format, the .json extension is very important over here. So we are having the first name and last name over here, and I'm just going to save it. And this first name and last name file, I'm just going to import it into this input metadata. Naming it as a JSON example. So whatever the input metadata we are having here is in the JSON format, and I just want to transform it into XML format. If I am just typing the normal payload over here in the Java format, here we can see the preview. So it is in the Java format over here. And if you are just moving for the JSON format, it is giving the response. But when we are moving for the XML format, it is not providing the data. And if I just want the same data in the JSON format, okay, and whenever we are just mapping accordingly, if I don't want the first name as my response, what we are doing, we are just importing another file over here and mapping it accordingly. But without mapping it, okay, I don't want to display it as an first name as our response. I just want to display it as an F name. So whatever the payload we are getting for the first name, I just want to display it as an F name. So without mapping, okay, externally mapping over the things over here, just by scripting it, we can do it exactly in this way. So the payload is nothing but the response. Whatever the payload we are getting for the last name, I just want to display it as an L name. So previously we had externally mapped them. Something was scripted exactly in this way on the right hand side, but now we are scripting it manually. And whenever we are moving for the XML format exactly in the same way, so it is throwing an exception. Why it is throwing an exception? Because whenever we are moving for the XML format, there should be an header part and the body part. So if I am adding this user as an header part and this fname and lname are acting as a body part, now we are able to get the response in the XML format over here. Any doubts in it, guys? So that is what the example they had mentioned over there. Okay, how to transform the data into the XML format. Sudhir and Ram, are you having any doubts?
No, Mahesh. No, Mahesh, no.
Okay. Okay. So we'll just move for the next example over here. So whatever the okay. So now I just want the response in the JSON format itself. But without adding the curly braces and with adding the curly braces, what is the difference between them? So if we are having multiple fields, in order to consider them as unset, we just need to add the curly braces. If we are not adding the curly braces, then it would be throwing an exception for us, as you can see here, because it won't be considered as unset. But if we are only having one field as our response, then no need to add the curly braces over here. And here, if I just want to count, okay, num colon 1. Num colon 1 is nothing but user 1. Okay. So in the place of this num, you can type it as an user. Since there is only one first name and one last name is persisting over here, so we can name it as an user 1. And if I just want to consider, okay, first name as an first user, and if I just want to consider the last name as a second user, so we can do it. But now we are having two users over here. In order to consider multiple fields as unset, we are adding the curly braces here. But in order to consider these two users as unset for us, we are just adding the square brackets. Any doubts in it, guys? For anyone?
No, Mahesh.
So guys, if you are not having any doubts, we'll just move with the next example. That is what the example they had given over here. So now whatever the data we are having is in the XML format. Let's copy it. And since the file is in the XML format, we just need to save it with the .json .xml extension. So XML.xml file I had previously created it. So I'm just pasting it. So whatever the data we are having here is this user is acting as an header part. First name is acting as an attribute under it. Last name is acting as a body part over here. So first name is acting as an attribute. So whenever we are adding any of the data, and if I just want to display the data as our response, we can display this user header and the body part. But in order to display this attribute which is under the header part, the first name, we just need to add the @ symbol. I'll just show it for you now. Okay, now what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to delete this transform message connector. XML example. In the desktop, we are just having the XML.xml file over here. See here, the first name is called as an attribute. The @ symbol is added over here. So whatever the data we are having now is this user is acting as an header part and the last name is acting as a body part over here. And if I just want the total payload as our response in the JSON format. So here user is acting as a header and last name is acting as a body. But we are unable to get the first name as our response over here. So in the example, so if I just want to delete this user as our header part, so what we can do, we can type dot user. So whenever we just need to delete any of the field, we can type dot the name of the field, so that will be removed from the response part over here. And now, if I just want to display the first name as our response, and I don't want to display the first name as a name for the users, I just want to display the first name as an F name for the users. So whenever we are displaying the first name, it is picking it as a null over here, as you can see. So as I said for you, because it is unable to find the response in the header part and the body part. If we just need to pick the attribute, we just need to add the @ symbol. Then only it will go under the header part and check whether the option is available there or not. We are having L name. Last time we are obviously getting it as our response. So here in this way we can transform the data from XML format to the JSON format over here. Any doubts in it, Ram and hello, Sudhir?
No, Mahesh, no.
Okay. And now whatever the next example we are having here is, yeah. So previously we had seen only the single user data. If we are having by multiple users, so I'm just pasting this data in the JSON file over here and saving it in order to call them into the input metadata. In order to update it, so now we are having the multiple data. If I'm just picking it as a payload and the payload in the JSON format, see the preview, we'll be able to get the same response here. But if I just want to display F name as my response, okay, for first name, see here what it is displaying. It is displaying both the first name responses at the same time. Okay, I don't want to display this both the first name responses at the same time. Okay, for us. So what we can do, whatever the payload we are getting from the input metadata, I just want to map it accordingly. So whatever the first name we are getting, I don't want to display it as an F name. First name, I just want to display it as an F name. So this dollar is nothing but it will pick the individual payloads. The payload is nothing but it will pick the total response. The dollar is nothing but where it will be able to pick the individual payloads. So we are using the dollar symbol over here. So how many fields are available? If there are 1000 fields available as well, it will be able to map it accordingly to the total payload, according to whatever we are scripting here. Name colon dollar dot last name. And if you want to count number of values, okay, number of users, so here you can count it. For example, let us assume that the users are there are 4 users. Since it is counting the values from 0 onwards, it is picking from 0, 1, 2, 3. If you want to count the values from 1, okay, here it is able to count the values from number. Okay, that is what the examples they had given over here. And if you want to add this users as a main header over here, and after that, after mapping it, okay, if you want to consider the user as a subheader, you can add it in this way. So this user is acting as a main header, the user is acting as a subheader for each and every F name and L name. Any doubts in this example for anyone? Sudhir? Ram?
Hello.
Hello?
Mahesh, what is the difference between this payload map? What is payload map? Can you explain again? Payload map.
Payload map is nothing but what is payload? Whatever the response we are getting. Okay, map is nothing but we are mapping everything. So whatever the script we are scripting here, only one time we are scripted F name to first name, right? But it is mapping to all the first names. So we are mapping everything to the total payload. Whatever we are scripting here.
Okay.
Did you understand, Ram?
Yeah, if you take only no payload means what will happen? Can you try?
I did not get it.
In case of payload
Hello?
map, if you take only payload, if you remove map.
That mapping will be removed, right? It will throw the
Oh,
exception for us.
okay.
Okay, we just need to map the total response here. We are mapping the
Okay.
total response, whatever we are having in the input metadata.
Okay. Okay.
You got it right?
If you also having only one user name, one first name and one last name, in that case also map we have to use payload map.
Yes.
One single data is there, na? One first name, one last name. One record is there. In that case also you have
Yes.
to use payload map. Okay. Okay.
So guys, if you are not having any doubts, can we move for the next example here?
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. Sorry for that. So here, whenever we are adding this $$ symbol on the left hand side, and if I just want to call this the individual payload over here, so we just need to add the brackets over here. First name equals to Max and last name equals to Mule. And exactly in the same way, you can add the single quotations as well. And if you want to remove everything and add this num, or in the place of num, you can add user 0, user 1, user 2. In this way, we can fetch the data from it. So that is what they had given in this total example. Any doubts in it, guys?
Mahesh, single dollar, double dollar difference. What is the difference between single dollar and double dollar?
$$ symbol will be counting the number of users here. Okay.
Okay.
Single double is nothing but it isn't a individual payload. How it is picking the first name and last name. It is counting the values, right? $$ symbol here.
Okay.
1, 2, 3 users.
Okay.
It is starting from 0. Yes, sir?
Okay. Okay. Double dollar means it will counting the number. Single dollar, it will take the values. Huh?
Yes.
Okay.
And guys, are you having any doubts in it? If not, we can move for the next example.
Okay, Mahesh. Okay.
So if I just want to consider them in the list format, and if I just want to remove the curly braces symbol over here, how can we do it? We can do it by applying the just a moment. Yes, perfect. Okay, we can consider them in the list format exactly in this way. If you want to remove any of the curly braces, okay, or else if you are adding any user symbol here, that curly braces will be removed. Okay, and if we are removing these brackets, the curly braces will added over here. If you want to remove anything, you can remove it by using this bracket symbol and the curly braces at the starting point. Any doubts? With that, if you're not having any doubts, we'll just go with the next example here. Okay, these things we have seen it. Now, whatever the file we are having is in the XML format. And we are having multiple data now. Okay, two first names and two last names we are having it now. So how to transform it? So whatever the data we are having now, we are having it in the XML format, and I just want to transform the data into JSON. So here we had, and if I just want to delete users header, and if I want to delete the user header as well. So because we had deleted the user header, it is able to pick only the first body part. It is unable to pick all the user header parts. So in order to pick all the user header body parts over here, we just need to apply the star symbol. Okay. And now, if I just want to map it accordingly, I don't want to display first name as my response. I just want to display it as an F name. And whenever we are moving for the first name here, and this first name is called as an attribute here since it is under the subheader. So we just need to add the @ symbol. And exactly in the same way, I just want to display it as an L name and $. Last name displayed as our response. So in this way, we can delete the user header, map it accordingly, call the attribute, and map it. Any doubts in it, Sudhir and Ram? Sorry. Okay, if you're not having any doubts,
Here, star
there are,
means you have to to select the subheader. You have to use the star, na? Mahesh?
yes.
Okay, okay.
So here, whatever the data we are having, it is it has a name. If I just want that name in the uppercase letters, how we can do it? Hence, we are getting it as a name. And whatever the example we are having, it as an n colon. I just want to call it with n. And whatever the response I just want it is in the uppercase letters. Payload dot name. So for name, whatever the payload we are getting it as a max mule, I just want the payload in the uppercase letters, capital letters. Okay, it is in the Java format, so let me convert. See here, it is in the uppercase letters now. And if you want it in the lowercase letters. Lowercase. So in this way we can transform this data. Any doubts? Okay. So we are having first name equals to max and last name equals to mule as our response over here. So n colon, I just want payload dot nickname as my response. If the payload dot nickname is not available, by default, I just want payload dot first name as my response. Okay. So here it is displaying max as our response since the nickname field is not available here. Okay, we are adding the nickname field over here. Whatever the name we are providing in the nickname, that will be displayed as our response. If the nickname is not available, then first name will be displayed as our response. That is the condition which we had applied. So this is the last example which we are performing in this data web language. So are you having any doubts in it, Sudhir and Ram? Yes, guys. Hello. Okay. No. Okay, guys, if you're not having any doubts, tomorrow we will be moving with the Salesforce and JMS project. Okay. And day after tomorrow, like just we take a half an hour of session for file connector and batch process. That will be the end of our sessions. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Hello, Mahesh.
Yes.
M-unit test cases. You don't have M-unit test cases. No.
MUnit will not be covered in this topics because the MUnit is an advanced level course over
Okay.
here.
Okay. Uh-huh. Okay.
So there is separate course curriculum for the MUnit core connectors and those things.
Okay. Okay. Will you provide any material or interview questions for this?
Yes, yes. At the end, like I'll be providing all the material for you. Okay, in the drive itself, you can download it.
Okay. 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 Thank you.
Sure, guys. Thank you. Have a nice day.